Well, it's brilliant this week that we have time to talk with Anne Albinson. Anne's been part of our church for just shy of 20 years, which feels like time's really flown, Anne. But I think it's about that sort of time, isn't it?
I think so, definitely. Yeah, when you say it like that, it does sound a long time, but it doesn't seem as if I've been with you that long. But yes, it is 20 years. Correct.
You came to us as a church when you'd just become a Christian. You were an adult. You'd encountered the gospel, and you'd given your life to the Lord. And I'm kind of intrigued to know, why was the gospel good news to you at that time?
Well, I'd gone through quite a lot in a few years just before that. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, and I know that I worked in a school, Catholic school, and things were not quite right when my marriage ended. My mother had died in 1998, and then my marriage sort of started to crumble at the beginning of 2000, and I was just poleaxed, really, I suppose is a word. I had a friend whose mum was at your church, was at our church, and she'd been praying for me for ages. Little known, I didn't know that at the time. But I had a nervous breakdown. I was quite ill. And also in the hospital that I ended up in Derby, there was a nurse who brought me the Word for Today. And I started reading that. And it was then I went to see my friend, Anne Strickland. She was known to me, and Anne Walsh, Anne Strickland. I can't remember what her surname is now. She's just remarried. And I went to her house, and she took me to her church, and they actually said, does anybody want to accept Jesus into your life? And I just said, I've got to stand up. I've got to go out. And I just felt that the church, that sort of church, which was very unlike the Catholic church that I'd been brought up with, it just actually spoke to me. And I just had this yearning then to find out more and be involved in that. I can remember a hymn when I was all the way through, when I was going to Catholic church, the hymn, I have called you by your name, you are mine, from Isaiah. And that, or every time that was sung, I could feel something, but I didn't know what it was. And it was then that sort of Anne introduced me to the Elim church, and I just went in there, and normally Catholic church, half an hour, and I was thinking, oh, it's the end of this service, please, I want to get out now, I've had enough. And I came in at 10:30 and the service, and I was just so engrossed by it. And I can remember thinking, when it ended, thinking, what's happening? What's happening? I wanted to go on a bit longer, and then I looked at my watch and thought, oh my goodness, I've been here this long and I still want it going. I don't understand. And so that's when everything started coming to life for me, really. And then, it just progressed from there, because Mary Causa came alongside me and sort of helped develop my understanding of things and things like that, and that was brilliant. Yeah,
that's quite a dramatic story of a life being rebuilt, really.
Yeah. I mean, I was in a very bad place then. I was I don't know if you remember me.
Yeah, I do remember.
I was a wreck.
Yeah. But actually, the interesting thing was, that's not at all how you stayed.
No.
Because after about 4 or 5 years, you were coming up to a big birthday that we celebrate, and you told us that you were going to go around the world.
Yeah.
And you're going to take 12 months, sell up, And I've got to tell you, at the time, it was like with a mixture of absolute envy and, wow, I hope she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was such a marker point for you. What made you do it, and what did it mean to you?
Well, again, I think it was all sort of leading on from sort of, because with my nervous breakdown and everything that happened, I gradually gave up teaching, and then I went back to college and did complementary therapies. And I just thought I needed to, I wanted to go and visit my relatives in New Zealand, basically. And I was working out how much it would cost me and thinking, well, I'll do that. But I couldn't do it until my daughter was 18 and she was going to university. And so that, you know, the timing of it would be so. And then another friend just said to me, well, for the price of a ticket to go to New Zealand, you could go around the world, you know, on that. And that was it then. The seed was planted and it was like, oh my goodness. And my big birthday was coming up, 50th. And my daughter was 18 the same year, just a few weeks before my 50th. And I don't know, she would say that she decided to go around the world before I did, but I would say, no, it's the other way around. So I think we must have come to it at the same time. Rachel decided she wanted to go around the world and take a gap year. And I've never done the traveling because my ex-husband didn't like to travel very much. We got to France, we got to Spain, and that was it. But I really would love to have travelled. So we decided that we'd do the round the world trip. And I just was then quite nervous about it, obviously. And I kept thinking to myself, I've got to tell people I'm going, because if I tell people I'm going, I can't back out. So I was telling as many people as I could that I was going around the world. When I was 50, I was going around the world. And then when the actual time came, I've got 3 sons as well. And there were lots of difficulties going on with my sons. And I was thinking, I can't leave them. I can't not be there for them. And then just before we were needed to buy the tickets, it was like ding, ding, ding. Everything just went like a pack of cards. It all went into place. And the next minute we'd bought the tickets and it was like, oh, I am going. And we were planning the trip, and it was just, it was amazing. And that it came to the, just finished the courses that I was doing at college, and I had tried to go to university again to do physiotherapy. Basically told me that by the time I'd got my qualifications and done everything, I would be too old to repay the National Health, so it wasn't an option for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then I thought, well, I've not got an income at the moment. Sort of, I was living on sort of benefits, but they would come to an end when Rachel was 18. So I thought, I had my home. I was very lucky. I had my home with no mortgage, so I had a home. So I sold the car to buy the ticket for the trip. I rented out the house, and the money from the rent paid for me monthly as I was going around my trip. And I'd put a little bit of money back to one side for when I came home, so I had something before I could get a job.
There's people listening to this going, no, that's not a bad idea, you know, that's not a bad idea.
Oh, but the timing was perfect, because the rate, the exchange rate was €2 to the pound, $2 to the pound.
Those were the days.
I mean,
yeah.
As I say, God just had it all there, and it was dink, 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 and every box was ticked.
I know you could spend a lot of time telling us about all the brilliant places you've been to and all that you saw, and that would just make us very envious and dislike you intensely.
Amazing.
But yeah, so we're not going to do that. But what I would be interested in knowing, you know, what did the trip mean for you, and what did it mean for your faith? I
think it just, because of some of the absolute beauty of the world, that was, it just made, I was awestruck at several places that I saw, just because of the beauty of it. It was just amazing. But then also to see how some extremes of poverty and what people could live with and what people could live without. Um, things like that just sort of made me think, well, you know, life doesn't have to be lived how I was thinking about it. I could do it a lot more simply and be a lot more respectful of the world around me and how I used things and what I did. And I think it just changed my viewpoints on lots of things in that way. Yeah.
And in a sense, I mean, that's interesting. You should say that. You know that you could live differently, and you could.
Well, I lived out of a backpack for 12 months.
Yes.
I stank sometimes. I'm sorry, but I did because you couldn't get any washing done.
But then when you came home, after a few years, you made an equally surprising decision.
Yeah.
Become a foster parent.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that was a big step as well.
And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time when we were praying together in church, and you know, you told me you definitely felt this was what God was asking of you, and we prayed together about that a lot during those days. And here you are now. You are indeed a foster parent. You've seen a number of children through your doors. What's the biggest joy of being in that context as a foster parent?
The biggest joy is when, because I specialise with mums and young babies, generally speaking, so a mum will come with her new baby out of hospital into my home, and I'm there to support her and encourage her and build her up so that she has the confidence then to go out on her own and be a mum with her little one. And that's the biggest joy, seeing that happen and still being able to keep in touch with some of these girls and seeing them have another baby even. It's so that's the biggest joy, absolutely.
I suppose the other question then, the
you get the other side,
well,
where
what's the
the
biggest
mum
challenge?
and the baby don't carry on, and perhaps it's goes to a family member, little one goes to a family member, or little one, well, might go for adoption or whatever, and you've had mum in the house, so you know how mum is and how she loves her little one, but it's just probably not possible that she continues, and that's hard.
It must be a tiring role for you.
It is when you end up, because obviously if there's a breakdown with mum, then you get left with the little one. So last year I had a little one who came to me when she was born, 3 days old, with her mum, and after a few weeks it was obvious that mum wasn't able to continue, and I ended up looking after the baby till she was 7 months old before she went to a family member. So yeah, there were sleepless nights again at my age, not really meant to have a new baby in the house. And then at the moment I've got a 2-year-old, and I've had her on her own without her mum since the beginning of March. And obviously with the circumstances in lockdown, looking after a 2-year-old, it's some days you just want to walk away.
Yeah, I guess it's not all it's not all roses, is it? There's the challenges.
And at those times as well, there are certain circumstances where I can't see my own family.
Yeah.
So I have to sacrifice seeing my own family and my own grandchildren. So although we're in lockdown and doing that now, I do that as a general rule as part of my job sometimes. It's not exactly the same, but it feels like that sometimes, that I can't see them. So I usually have a few weeks off after I've had a placement, just to spend time with my own family. But again, then you're not earning an income, because you're not paid. You're only paid when you have a placement in the home. So yeah, you have to sort of work things out carefully.
So how could we pray for you? I think that's the answer.
Yeah, it's just there's just a myriad. It's just I couldn't say for one specific thing. It's just I think just for me and for anybody who's got little ones who's in this situation at the moment, at the present time, and then just for every foster carer, really, because we're all in the same boat.
Yeah. And you know, I would encourage people to do that, to pray for you and for the others that are fostering that we know and ones that we don't know. Conscious that sometimes you know, you're in church whenever you can, you know, you're at the services you can be, but there's actually times when you can't because of the situation you're in.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because I used to do the sort of the computer thing.
Yeah, PowerPoint.
And you know, I have not been able to do that. I enjoy doing those sorts of things. You know, way back, I used to do the tea and the coffee after the service. But all those things sort of have had to take a backward step, and so that's difficult, sort of not being able to be part of the community in that sense. But having the Zoom, that's
well, it's one of the interesting
occupied at the moment.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting benefits of the lockdown is actually is forced us to think about how we stay connected as a church when for folks like yourself, you are disconnected from us from time to time. And it's been brilliant to talk to you. We could go on a long time, and I just want to kind of applaud what you're doing. It's unseen a lot of the time, but it's really significant, and I'm glad you're part of the church. I'm glad that all those years ago that God got hold of you and rebuilt a life that has kind of, you know, was so difficult at that time, and that you've been willing to say yes to the adventures.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing about adventure. You just never know. And some days you stink, some days, and some days it's tough. But I just want to, you know, cheer you on as you continue this adventure with God. Thanks for the time you've taken with us this evening to talk. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.